Hello everyone, Dwayne Whitmer is here. We're going to talk about a recent victory that the people, if you will, have had in the town of Orchard Park, New York. Recently, the town clerk of Orchard Park, Remy Orfeo, has resigned. He retired early is what he calls it, but he ends his career with about a year and a half left to go in his term. And this video is going to talk about why it's actually a good thing this happened and kind of what led to us reaching out, going to the meetings and getting involved and kind of pushing for this to happen. So to begin, in Orchard Park, New York, there's an elected official that's the town clerk. And he, according to their website, what the town clerk does is it's an office dedicated to providing professional quality service in a prompt, courteous, and cost-effective manner to the residents of Orchard Park and to uphold all the responsibilities of this office in the same manner. That's their mission statement. That's what the town clerk does on their website. Really what the town clerk does is he's in charge of collecting the licenses, collecting the fees, issuing the permits, and he's also in the town of Orchard Park, the tax collector, which that does become a pretty big issue that we will get to later in this video, but that's the brief synopsis of what the town clerk does. So our issue started actually a few years ago where, for those of you that don't know, I own an accounting firm by trade. That is my day job. And a few years ago, we got into expanding into something called property tax assessment challenges, where in New York State, a lot of towns don't properly assess your housing value properly. And so if there's an issue, a discrepancy, you don't agree with the valuation, you can challenge it in front of a board assessment review, and get your property tax reduced. Now, in Orchard Park, we had a handful of clients, and how it started was, I'll give you another example. Client buys a house for $600,000. In theory, that's what your house should be assessed at. That's what you should pay taxes on because you have a marketable transaction, or pardon me, a market transaction that shows what your house is worth. And so typically the town should then say, okay, your full market value is $600,000. Our tax rate is this. You pay taxes on $600,000. Sometimes those values don't match up. They may have you assessed at a full market value of $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. We've seen some doozies. So that is where you petition the board assessment review and say, hey, look, you have me assessed at a fair market value of $800,000 and I'm paying $9,000 in taxes. I bought this house for $600,000. I should be paying $7,000 instead of $6,000 in taxes. I'm paying too much in taxes. And the bar, in theory, is supposed to say, you're right. Multiple case studies and court rulings have determined that that is the case. We will tell our assessor to reduce your fair market value and you save on your taxes. The whole other issue with board assessment reviews across the state, they're all dog and pony shows. Doesn't usually happen. So then you go to SCAR, Small Claims Assessment Review, and you meet with a hearing officer and they make a ruling. Now that's easier because we say, hey, look, town, this is what the house was paid for. This is what the New York State ruling is. This is what multiple court cases have ruled, that within 2 years of a purchase price, that is what your home should be for fair market value. That's what you should be paying taxes on. Multiple court rulings have determined this to be true. Usually a good hearing officer says, yeah, this is a slam dunk. This is a waste of my time. Rule in the favor of petitioner. And that's what happened in Orchard Park. But the problem in Orchard Park is the town of Orchard Park hired a lawyer to represent the town and spent, a little bit of money fighting essentially a losing case. So that's kind of where this started. That's the background. We get involved. We have a bunch of clients. We go to the bar. The bar ignores us. It was a very tense situation. We go to small claims. We, have to deal with a lawyer. And so we get rulings in our favor that the small claims SCAR officer said, yeah, the petitioner is correct, the lower the fair market values, and that's what should happen. So I'm reviewing my notes here. once that happened, we reach out to the town of Orchard Park, and the hearing officer sends his ruling to the town of Orchard Park and says, hey, reduce the taxes. Well, because they dragged their feet, the tax bills have already gone out. So our clients get these tax bills, and now we're in a tough spot because we look bad. We told the client, hey, we reduced your fair market value, yet they're getting tax bills that don't show a reduction. So we're trying to bill the client, but we can't because the client's not seeing results because the town of Orchard Park is playing games. So we're stuck in this kind of limbo situation that's building our frustration because it's like, hey man, we're doing our job. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. You're making us look bad, but B, you're not holding your end of this situation. You know, the court's ruled to lower the market value. The court has ruled we are correct. The court has ruled you got to give them a reduction. And they're dragging their feet. They're stalling. They're delaying. They're playing a bunch of games. So how this all started was we told the clients, you have to pay the tax bill. We're going to fight for a refund. And this is in 2023, maybe early 2024. Tax bills come out twice a year in New York State. Most areas, you get one in, January, and it's due in June. And I forget, I have it written down in my notes somewhere, but you get 2 bills a month. One's for town and county, one's for school. And we tell our clients, listen, you got to pay it, and we're going to fight for a refund. So we essentially fill out the paperwork to get a refund. And it took over a year and several months for the town to cut the refund check. So essentially a client overpaid sometimes thousands of dollars of property taxes to make sure the bill was paid on time, to not get hit with fees and penalties. And they send it to the county for, whatever, after 2 years foreclosure. So we have to tell the client to pay their taxes. The client pays the full tax bill, and a year and a half goes by where we're telling him, we need our refund, we need our refund, we need our refund. And he essentially illegal withheld property tax refunds, some for a year and several months, in violation of multiple court orders. We had the court ruling. We had the judgment showing that they overpaid on their taxes. Where's the money? So there's one. When confronted by the representative for the petitioner, he essentially said he doesn't know how the small claims assessment review SCAR works, and he should probably get better training. He doesn't know any of this works. Send him an email. Send me an email. Send me an email. That's what I said. Send me an email. Send me an email. Well, multiple emails went responded to the point where actually at one point, an independent journalist at Auditing Erie County got involved, went in and asked some questions, filled out some paperwork, and they still delayed. Oh, check will be coming, check will be coming. And like I said, it took a year and a half. We're telling our clients we got to win. They're not seeing it. It's frustrating. So he refused to properly respond to residents' concerns by phone, email, or in person, and was more often than not out of the office during normal business hours. So this is kind of where we start to come in. Another thing that he did, this in my notes, is that he failed to get property tax bills mailed out in a timely fashion, which pissed off town coworkers and town residents, and kind of led to a problem there as well. So this is where we come in now. We're being told, hey, look, Orchard Park owes me money. If you owe Orchard Park money, we've seen this happen before. They'll foreclose in 2 years. If you don't pay your tax bill in 2 years, they start foreclosure proceedings at the tax auction. So you're stuck where you have to pay the bill they've given you, even though you're overpaying, and fight for this refund for a year and a half. So in 2025, early 2025, I got involved and said, this is a problem. And we reached out to some independent journalists and got involved and started doing some research. So starting in 2025, I started going into the town clerk's office, and this is where it becomes a problem. Probably 3 or 4 times, February and March of 2025, probably 3 to 5 times total. Myself personally went into the town clerk office during business hours, which is like 8 to 4. This wasn't, on a random Friday night when the business is closed, or early Tuesday morning. This is during their posted business hours, and there's nobody in the office. Remy's not in his office. The staff isn't there. And if you look at the Orchard Park 2024 budget for town clerk, they have town clerk, $75,000, records management officer, $4,500, which we'll get to because a bunch of my foils will get there. Deputy Town Clerk, $53,000. Deputy Town Clerk Tax, $61,000. Second Deputy Town Clerk, $46,000. Clerical Tax, part-time, $36,000. These are all Town Clerk employees. None of them are in the office. This is $300,000 of wages 5 times in 2 months. And that's just me. That doesn't include some members of the public that reached out, said, hey, I've gone to the town board or the town clerk multiple times. No one's there. They don't know when he'll be there. He's not in. My partner went in a couple times. No one is there. A couple independent journalists went in. No one is there. And this is where the problem in my research really starts because, like I mentioned earlier, I own an accounting practice by trade. And this is kind of where some of these concerns kind of come in. So I gave you the synopsis of what the town clerk does, which is very generic. But really what the town clerk is in charge of doing is he's the tax receiver. He receives your tax payments. He disperses those payments to the proper accounts. And he's in charge of licensing and permitting. This is a problem because you need to get a dog license. You go into the town clerk's office. There's no one there. How do you apply and get a dog license? You're wasting your time trying to pay for something. The other issue is a lot of these permitting and licenses are cheap. It's birth certificate, $10, death certificate, $10, dog license, $20, or 12 it's spayed or neutered. Filling out FOIL requests, which I'll get to in a minute when I filled out multiple FOIL requests and the FOIL officer's never in. A whole other issue. Hunting and fishing licenses, yada, yada. There's all these licensing and permitting. Why I'm getting at this is important is that these are a lot of things that are paid in cash. Well, we start looking into the town clerk and seeing that I don't think he's the most competent person. So then it turns out that sometime in May or June, there's an issue with alleged misappropriation where he's transferring money not to the right accounts. So their independent financial auditor does a write-up saying that there's $100,000 missing. It's not misappropriated, it's missing according to the Orchard Park supervisor, which means we don't know where it went. So then they dig down and say bank reconciliations aren't being done, so we don't know what's really happening with the transactions because the bank reconciliations aren't being done. And there's a poor proper control of the finances. Here's where this becomes a massive problem is I own an accounting practice by trade. I have financial audit experience. One of the firms I worked at before I went on my own was an accounting firm that did financial audits of towns and counties. There's something called a control issue, which is essentially oversight. And in Orchard Park, you had a massive oversight issue where if the town clerk's not in managing the employees and managing directives and being a director, you're taking these payments in cash for licensing. Is that money being deposited or is ending in someone's pocket? Are licenses being paid for? Are they being applied for? Are they being processed? Who knows? There's no one there. He blamed COVID and a lack of staffing for these issues. Really, it's a lack of management and leadership. He was the elected town clerk. The buck stops with him, if you will. He should be in charge. He should be delegating. But multiple times you're going there. And if your manager isn't there, if your leader isn't there, you're slacking off, you're not doing your job, the staff isn't there. Again, $300,000 a year just in wages. It doesn't include health insurance. It doesn't include benefits. It doesn't include the retirement. So it's over $300,000 in 6 employees, and there's no one there. And so when a couple of us spoke to the Orchard Park Town Board in June, I believe, we said, here's where there's a bigger issue. When you have poor management, poor leadership, poor oversight, this leads to more issues. You could have theft. I do believe, if you look at this, massive time theft. You have 3 or 4 full-time employees that aren't working. And like I said, if I'm going in once a week and I have 5 or 6 people saying, well, I went in this day, there's no one there. I went in this day, there's no one there. Are you working? Are you working from home? Well, the job's not getting done because the finances aren't being controlled. So you have a lack of financial control. Does that mean that the money's being spent properly, efficiently, and wisely? We don't know. And when you have poor leadership and poor controls, that incentivizes fraud. One of the biggest forms of fraud is time theft. What time theft is I clock in at 8 o'clock, I clock out at 4 o'clock. That's 8 hours on the clock. I work for 2. I clock in, I don't work. I clock in, I slack off all day. That's time theft. And that's a huge issue when your manager isn't in the office, when your leader isn't in the office. And I do believe there was a huge problem with time theft. And that's why tax bills are getting sent late. Tax refunds aren't being sent. There's just no one working in the office. They're collecting a paycheck to do nothing. So a bunch of us spoke our concerns at a town board meeting in June. And what happens when you piss people off and when you treat the public with disdain, when you don't treat the public with respect, you are a public servant. When you don't treat the public with respect, that's where the public hires or looks to people like me. I do research and investigations, independent auditors and independent journalists such as Auditing Erie County and other people. They get phone calls, they get tips, they get the frustration, and they start looking into things. So when this $100,000 misappropriated money, I'll put an article in the description here. When this happened, we pounced on it because now there's more issues, there's more concern. You caught our attention, we're hammering you, and this comes out, and now we're looking into it. So I went in again to foil this audit report. And here's an example of just incompetence and inability in the town clerk. Apparently, and we didn't get good information on this, and this is actually a big deal. There was a meeting with the town clerk and board members, and the town clerk's wife was there. Now you're wondering, Dwayne, what's the big deal? Why do I care about this? She is a member of the public. She does not hold a position in the town of Orchard Park. She's not a town employee. She's not on the board. She's not in the clerk's office. She's a member of the public. As soon as a member of the public was at that meeting, by definition, it became a public meeting, which means notes should be kept, records should be kept, minutes should be kept. There should be some documentation of the meeting. We've never gotten it. Why this becomes a problem is if you're talking about private financial information in a now public meeting and not giving it to the public, that's a problem. But also, you're extending liability if you're saying this wasn't a public meeting, this was a closed meeting, but she's there. In theory, you're expanding liability to her, but she's not covered under the town's legal coverage because she's not an employee of the town. To put this in, an equivalent would be you have a company vehicle, you're covered under company insurance, other people are not. You're the insured driver. You let your friend drive the car, he gets in an accident. It's a big problem. This is the same thing. She's not hired by the town of Orchard Park. She's not employed by the town of Orchard Park. She's not affiliated with the town of Orchard Park. She's not covered under their essential legal liability and insurance. So now you're putting a lot of liability on the financial problems on her. And so I brought that up at the meeting that this isn't good. This is a pretty big mistake, especially because you're talking about some really problematic situations. $100,000 is missing. It's not misappropriated. It's missing. $100,000 has been put somewhere that you're trying to find, but you can't find it. This is a problem. And so at the last board meeting we were at, we spoke out about this, and I said, we're going to look into this. We're going to research it. And it turns out about a month later, Remy Orfeo retires. He ends his term early. And, this is a pretty big issue. He was incompetent. He was not a qualified employee of Orchard Park. He won an election, but he wasn't qualified to do the job. And now hopefully Orchard Park can get someone in there that knows what they're doing and gets his employees in the office and gets them working and gets them trained on how things should work. And hopefully, if you believe in good government, good government for the people, by the people, the catchphrases that people say, hopefully this is a win for people that believe in that. And you get someone in there who can do the job properly. But, there were some concerns. This is a win for the people because it showed that there was an issue brought to light by independent journalists. We filled out foils. We did our research, we went to board meetings, and we kind of brought the attention that may have been pushed under the rug. We brought it to light and we got resolution. And so there was a problem. Now it is hopefully solved. We shall see. We'll keep an eye on Orchard Park for if we can get those bank accounts reconciled and the money found and, proper controls over their employee time management and proper controls over where the money's going and proper controls over sending the refund checks, and maybe some more efficient government not spending money on lawyers, but spending money on training so that their employees can do their jobs better. Maybe this is a win for the people of Orchard Park, but this just goes to show how important it is to get involved locally. Go to your board meetings, read your newspaper, get involved, fill out foils. You know, something I mentioned about the FOIL officers, I went in twice to fill out foils, and both times I was told the FOIL officer wasn't there. No one is in the town clerk's office. I'm wandering around Orchard Park Town Hall trying to find someone to take my foil, and no one knows what they're doing. FOIL is a whole other issue because sometimes it's also a dog and pony show. Oh, you can fill out a Freedom of Information Law FOIL request and we'll give you the information, and they fight tooth and nail to give it out. But it's another form of direct action, just like it is going into your board meetings and speaking on behalf of the people. So this was a small win for the people of Orchard Park and the people that redress their government, and it's a win for direct action. It's an example of why you should get involved locally and why people need to keep an eye on their elected officials. And yeah, that's my follow-up video on what happened with Remy Orfeo in the town of Orchard Park. The Orchard Park, New York town clerk resigned. Hopefully we get some changes for the good there. I hope you all have a great night. That is the longer version. If you have any questions, let me know in the messages. I will post the B article about the missing money. So that'll be in there. Have a good night. Hope everyone has a great day. And as always, get involved locally. Direct action is the best way to resist a tyrannical government. So you guys take care. Have a good one.